Let's bring in Chris Mannix, Yahoo Sports, senior NBA writer. Did the Celtics see this coming, Chris, that Kyrie Irving was a possibility of missing the rest of the season?
No, I don't believe they did, Dan. Look, you go back to last summer, and there was some thought within the organization based on what they knew from Cleveland that perhaps Kyrie Irving would need some kind of cleanup procedure at some point to address, the screws that are in that knee, the wire that's in that knee. But they believed he'd be able to play through it, and it wasn't until that pain got completely intolerable that they had to go this now twice surgically repair route. But the significant procedure came as a major surprise to them. That the bacteria infection that he's dealing with in there, that was not something they saw coming.
Handicap the East playoff now.
I've watched a lot of Toronto, and maybe more than most, and I'm buying the Raptors. I think the Raptors are the favorite here. And I know they got beat twice by Cleveland, but they're an entirely different team when they play on their home floor. They've only lost 7 times at home, Dan. And you look at some of those young guys, the bench guys, the Fred VanVleets and the Pascal Siakam, the unheralded guys. They play a lot better on that home floor. Now, there's a mental block with Toronto when it comes to LeBron. And if they lose game 1 in a conference finals to Cleveland, all bets are off there. But for right now, because of Cleveland's defense, because the margin for error for them is so small given the talent on their roster, because as we sit here with a week to go in the season, they're still changing their starting lineup. I'm just not believing the Cavs can win the East this year.
LeBron have any chance to win the MVP? I guess he has a chance, but is there any chance that he will, or best chance that he'll win this?
No. The Washington Post a couple of months ago did a straw poll among voters. I'm one of them. And James Harden won in a landslide. And, look, LeBron is having maybe his best offensive season. And what he did, watching him last night, the last 4 minutes of the game, is a testament to all that. But James Harden, I think, has only had 2 months this year where he hasn't averaged 30 points per game. The Rockets are the best team in the West, and they have, I think, still a top 10 defense. It's going to be – I just think it's impossible for LeBron to overcome that. I'm going to vote for James Harden. I think it's going to be it's going to be almost a landslide.
I understand it. It's James Harden's time, but I think LeBron James is having one of the best years of his career and certainly has been.
Is it a two-way year, though, Dan? That's my question for you. Is it a two-way year? Because I've seen him, and I was at a couple of games live in the last month. He's playing. I mean, mediocre defense doesn't even cover it.
Yeah, but James Harden doesn't play defense.
It doesn't matter. James Harden is on a defensive team, though. That team is a top 10-ish defensive team this year. That has to be factored into all this.
Yeah, but he's not playing defense on a defensive-minded team. They help him out. So LeBron has got to do everything on his team. Who helps out LeBron here? James Harden gets help.
No, you're right. James Harden has the best defensive cast around him. But I think James Harden is trying defensively, and I can't say the same for LeBron for a large part of the game, Dan. I mean, look, watch these games, the first 3 quarters. I'm saying this. I don't blame him at all because of the burden he has to take on offensively.
Yes.
He should manage his body throughout the course of a game. But if you're talking MVP, if he was a two-way player this year, I would vote for him. This year, he's not.
Yeah, but I can't give James Harden credit because of the defense he doesn't play, but his team does. But I'm going to hold that against LeBron.
Team defense, Dan, team defense is a thing. I mean, I'm not saying that James Harden is this, part of this connective tissue that creates this defensive climate in Houston, but team defense is a thing. They're not winning games, or they're not a good defensive team just because Clint Capella blocks shots or because Luc Mbah a Moute gets stopped. There's a team defensive element here, and I think you have to give Harden some credit for that.
All right, let's say both got hurt in November for the year. Which team has a better record now, Houston or Cleveland?
Houston does. More talent.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Cleveland makes the playoffs.
Yes.
If LeBron gets hurt in November.
That makes my point.
Well, I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying he's not a consensus number 2 here, Dan. But the point is, neither one of them has been hurt for a month, so we don't have that kind of. We can't. I don't think we should ask that hypothetical when voting for the MVP. You're not voting on the best player in the league. You're voting on the guy that's had the most valuable season, and James Harden to me is that clearly.
Where is LeBron next season?
I mean, look, one thing we can be sure of is that when we discuss this in October, November, there will be something revealed about it, whether it's a plan in place or something he and player X have talked about. If you're asking me the smartest place for him to go, it's still Philadelphia. I mean, it just is. You know, LeBron goes to Philadelphia. He fits in right away. He becomes the alpha of that team, and he can age gracefully. Because over the next 5-6 years, as LeBron's game inevitably at some point winds down, he is going to have guys around him that can step into bigger roles and allow him to be a second, third, fourth type of option on that team. That makes the most sense. I don't have any idea where he ultimately winds up. That's in his head.
But it feels like Philadelphia, and I remember bringing it up on the air, and it hadn't gone public, I don't think. And then all of a sudden I said, you know, why would he go west when he could stay east? And you have this talent there. And I know him and Ben Simmons might be kind of playing the same position here, but you want to get back to the Eastern Conference Finals. You're going to have to go through Boston and Toronto again. But I'm thinking, what about Portland's young talent? Would there be any chance with Portland with LeBron?
Yeah, I think, you know, Portland, you remember Neil Olshey was the GM of the Clippers when they got a meeting with LeBron back in 2010. And that was when the Clippers were a mess. And so I think Neil Olshey being there and the team he's put together is going to make them an attractive piece. But Portland has had trouble recruiting guys in the past. Remember, Carmelo wouldn't even consider a trade there when he was, you know, thinking about waiving his no-trade clause. So I think it's possible, but I don't look at them as a front runner.
There's going to be some tanking here. Like, how bad is this going?
Biblically,
how bad is this going to get with tanking here in the final week?
I mean, it's been as bad as I've ever seen it over the last few weeks. Like, what kind of gravitas does the NBA have at this point? Where, you know, they ordered the Bulls to play Robin Lopez. And the Bulls said, okay. They played him for like one game and then sat him out again. And then, I mean, Marc Gasol, you know, if the Grizzlies build a lead, Marc Gasol comes out. Like, that's where they're at with all this. Sacramento, same thing. There's some games, Dan, that over the next 4 or 5 days, I'm just going to hate watch. I'm going to hate watch them to see what happens. Like Grizzlies, Mavs, I think that's end of the season. Yeah. I think Grizzlies, Kings is tonight. This is probably the most egregious example of tanking that we have ever seen when you consider the number of teams, as many as 8, that are brazenly tanking.
Who is tank worthy here? Is there one player that you go, you know, this Bagley or Ayton, are they tank worthy? Yeah,
teams tell me at this point, and we have the Portsmouth camp next week and the combine after that, so things change. But teams tell me that Ayton has kind of emerged as a consensus number one, a guy that eventually could be a monster on the boards, like almost a Drummond type on the boards, but also can shoot the three. They like him a lot. But this is a draft, Dan, where 3, 4, 5, we could see franchise players. That's how high a lot of people are on this draft, and that's why this tanking has been so bad.
I asked this question to Doug Gottlieb. If I said Grayson Allen, Trae Young, or Dante DiVincenzo, who's your better pro?
I'd take Trae Young.
Okay.
And it's not just because of the hype. You know, a lot of people kind of zoned in on him from like mid-December on, and even now, the reports back on him are still really good. Now, he really struggled towards the end, but I mean, he had to carry that team, Dan. I mean, he put them on his shoulders. I think Trae Young is a lottery pick and the best player of the three.
I like that Gottlieb said Trae Young is going to get a coach fired. It's an interesting quote.
Might get a GM fired if you wind up taking him in kind of Zimmer range, and there's 3, 4 guys behind him that are better and wind up on those teams.
Thank you, Chris. Good to talk to you again. Have a good weekend.
Dan, I just like the opportunity, though, to quickly bring to your attention
Ricky
Rubio's candidacy for most improved player. Let me give you just 10 seconds here. So, as you know, Ricky Rubio has been arguably the NBA's best player since the All-Star break. His scoring has jumped to the teens. His three-point shot, once foolishly believed to be an Achilles heel, has become a weapon for him.
That's it. I gave him 10 seconds. I might have given him 11 there.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.